How's it going, everyone? It is illumignostic with a quick retreat update. A lot of you know that we hit some turbulence in the last month or so, but that everything has kind of settled, and we're going to talk about where that put us. And then I have maybe 30 to 45 minutes for AMA, which doesn't have to be about the retreat. It can be if you guys have any questions or want to discuss anything that I have anything to say about. It's totally open. So, yeah, just a quick recap. I had some sort of insect born. Hey, what's going on, man? I was wondering if you were still out there, Big C. I had some kind of weird insect born illness. I was bitten on the lip, which usually means kissing bug, which usually means Chagas. A bunch of tests, no clear result. Eventually, I just kind of got better after taking ivermectin and some antivirals and a lot of very powerful, what's going on, Johnny G, teas from the jungle, in particular Mimosa pudica. But yeah, so it was scary and it was discouraging because I lost maybe a month of productivity, a little bit more, maybe 6 weeks. And in the middle of all that, we were informed by the owners of Ingaru, where we were going to host our retreat, that they had not paid their mortgage in over a year, and that the banks were foreclosing. And they said that we had 1 week, and they were going to come and rope the place off. Obviously, I'm living there with my family. We had viewed it as a long-term situation, so suddenly we had to relocate, and I was like bedridden, so it was all very dramatic. And ultimately, I got better, and we found another lodge to rent. I want to talk a little bit about that. This is an amazing place. I feel like we got really, really lucky because when we realized we had to leave Ngaru, and we only had a month until guests started to arrive, and I had to be in the same area because we have to be able to see Mama Celia and some of the other attractions that I've advertised. So I had to stay in the area, and so we found this place through a Quechua friend who is like the taxi driver that we call to take us everywhere we go. And his family owned this property, and the property is at the end of civilization. So this road that we're on, we're right on the road, but there's really no traffic ever, so it's not like obnoxious. But right at the end of the road, maybe another, it's about a 30-minute walk. There's Laguna Azul, the Blue Lagoon, and it's basically just chutes of crystal clear ice cold water, chiseling rock down the side of the mountain. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. It's absolutely beautiful. There are calm pools where you can swim. It's just surreal. It's like so beautiful that it's surreal. And then it goes down and dumps out into the Napo River, where there's just jagged white rocks like sticking up out of the ground everywhere, and the super turbulent river tearing down through the middle of it all. So then we have several other little smaller lagoons and waterfalls, and just amazing. There's a trail right behind the house that goes down to the river through the jungle. There's all kinds of fruit trees. We have parrots outside. And the local Quechua people here are the nicest and most welcoming of any of the communities that we've been in so far, which is really nice to feel sort of welcomed. In fact, gold is a kind of a hot button issue here because the Chinese come and they destroy everything, and they even kill landowners if they want the property. They'll have them assassinated if they won't sell. And so my partner and I like to prospect just gold panning and a little what do you call it, the thing that sits in the water and the water washes the gold. How can I not recall it? Sluice. So it's non-invasive. It's not a big deal. We're not like damaging anything. But in a lot of the communities, they really frown on it. And here the people have been like, oh, you guys want big gold? Go over to this waterfall, and underneath there are nuggets everywhere, and just totally, sharing all their favorite gold spots, and which is totally unusual. So it feels like the most open and least paranoid environment that we've been in so far. Certainly my family is happier here than they've been in any of the other spots. So the energy is really, really positive. And again, it's an amazing spot. We're just surrounded by, these crazy natural features everywhere. So typical day, we'll wake up and have some of illumignostic's elixir, which is what healed me from, I guess it's not Chagas. Hold on, let me catch up with the chat. Oh, okay. So he's asking mushrooms versus ayahuasca. We'll definitely get to that. We're working with both, actually. And well, let me finish my my little story about the location. I don't know why that message is now redacted, but at any rate, so a typical day, we wake up, we drink this tea that I make, which is right on Aegon. Based on around Mimosa pudica, but it also contains Bobinsana, Chiric sananga, which is not the sananga that you use the eye drops. That's Utu sananga. It's a different plant. Uña de gato, which is powerfully anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, and all these things that I'm listing are from studies as well as, folk knowledge. So these plants have been studied and everything I'm saying has been confirmed. Mimosa pudica is extraordinarily effective at treating depression, but it also has antiviral, antibacterial. If you're trying to get pregnant, not good. It's anti-fertility, but it's also aphrodisiac. It does contain trace amounts of 5-MeO-DMT, which is orally active, as opposed to NN-DMT, which is not active. There's not enough of it in this tea to have an effect, but you are microdosing 5-MeO-DMT when you drink this tea. Bobinsana, which is for opening the heart. It contains some of the same alkaloids as ayahuasca, Harmala alkaloids, but it's not like strongly psychoactive, but it's very powerful medicine nevertheless. What else do we have in there? Typically, I vary it up a little bit depending on what medicine we're taking, how people are doing, what needs anyone in particular might have. Oh, it's flavored with hibiscus fruits. I feel like I'm missing something really essential. Oh, I said Uña de Gato, Bobinsana. Oh, Amiruka and Chalipongo, which are both DMT containing plants that are used with the Banisteriopsis caapi vine, but in threshold amounts, so you'll barely notice it. And both of those plants have other uses, medical uses. All of these things are extremely anti-inflammatory, which is the basis for any and all healing. Somebody pointed out to me recently that almost all known recreational drugs are enhanced by taking turmeric and black pepper. All that's doing is creating less inflammation in the body and making you more receptive to the input from these compounds. And so, that's a huge thing with this tea, is just all this anti-inflammatory mojo. So have a cup of that first thing in the morning, and then we may go sit by a waterfall, have a rape session, come back and relax a bit, and then we might have ayahuasca here with myself, or we may go to Mama Celia's place in Archidona, which is about 40 minutes away. For those of you that aren't aware, Mama Celia was contacted or made contact with civilization at about the age of 17. She spoke no Spanish, only Quechua. She says that she spent her entire childhood just in caves and lagoons and just in the jungle, and she didn't even know what a town was until she was 17 years old. So there's a video that you can watch that I made of one of our visits to her. It's really an honor and just an extraordinary thing to even be in the presence of someone who lived outside of society to that extent that, only saw a toilet for the first time in the last 10 years. We also have the option of spending time with local Warani, who also probably saw a toilet for the first time 10 years ago or so. But that's an additional trip. It's something that the group would collectively vote on. Maybe some of us want to go. It's 2.5 hours away. Maybe other people will stay here. We're going to have a lot of that optional stuff that we can do. We can go to Baños and see the volcano, because most of the people are going to be here for a month, so we're going to have a lot of time. And I really like the idea of putting pretty much equal emphasis on going out into the jungle and exploring and having some appreciation for the natural beauty here. Ecuador is really underrated. It's truly just an incredible place. In fact, this morning I saw an insect that is literally the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I've never seen it before. This happens almost every day here in the Amazon. If you look in my shorts, you can find a video of it, but it looked like a moth with an alligator head, and the head is fake. It's just like this hollow mask, but it looks like it has like a crease for where its mouth should be, and eyes, fake eyes, a lizard head. It looks like a flying iguana. I mean, this place is just absolutely insane with the biodiversity. And so, again, that's why I like to put pretty much equal emphasis on just exploration and going out into the jungle. And, you know, of course, there's plenty of plant medicine. We're having changa, ayahuasca, arape. Bobinsana is basically my ally plant that I use all the time. So Bobinsana just kind of goes without saying, because it's in everything. It's in the teas, it's in the ayahuasca. You're just consuming it all the time. Most of us have, you know, trauma, and we have to open our hearts more, and that's what Bobinsana is for. If you have concrete encasement on your heart, it is a sledgehammer that will break it open. So, the dates are April 2nd through 29th, I think. Whatever it is exactly 28 days from the 2nd. You can come for as short as a week, or you can stay for the whole time. I recommend at least 10 days, so you can have some time to rest between ceremonies and get plenty of ceremonies. And if you're coming all the way to South America, to Ecuador from somewhere like the United States, you know, you want to make the most of it. But if you insist, you can come for less time. We have 3 spaces open for the entire month. So it's still an option for some of you guys that might last minute decide that you want to come. Don't know if we're doing it again, so it might be last chance. All right, let me catch up with the chat. Okay, somebody asked me about the difference between ayahuasca and mushrooms. At really, really high doses, mushrooms are kind of similar. I mean, if you take enough of any psychedelic, it just kind of all becomes the same. And that's not exactly true, but it has enough truth to it. It really depends on your intentions. But I think the most basic thing that I could say about that is that ayahuasca really is the most effective of all the indole ring psychedelics at healing emotional trauma. It also engages the capacities of consciousness like precognition, which, by the way, I'm not invoking woo here. I think that precognition can be explained by subconscious pattern recognition, or woo. You know, we don't know. But there's that. And then there's also the fact that ayahuasca really presents itself as an intelligence. So do mushrooms. You know, people talk about having conversations with the mushroom and the sort of personality that the mushroom has and all of that sort of thing. And I totally agree, but it's just to a much greater extent. With ayahuasca, you feel like you're in the presence of something very old, very powerful, holy might be a good word to describe it, and highly intelligent. Again, you know, I'm not 100% convinced that it is objectively a spirit. And I know indigenous shaman that say the same thing. So it's just that regardless of the objective reality of it, it is such a tremendously important experience for anyone to be put in that unbelievable of circumstances where your credulity is stretched so thin that it has no choice but to snap. It's an absolutely essential experience, I think. And, you know, it takes some practice, it takes some development, but you learn to relax enough to have a dialogue with ayahuasca, and that's when things get really interesting. And that's also one of the reasons why I don't really like it when people come for 5 days or something. It's much better to spend some time really working with the medicine, because, you know, the first time you take it, maybe nothing happens or very little happens. The next time you take it, it's physical. The next time you take it, it's psychological, then emotional, and then it starts to get spiritual. It really took me 11 ceremonies before the cartoony nature. I mean, I was having visions, trust me. But it took me about 11 ceremonies before the cartoony nature of it completely went away, and I had visions that looked as real as anything, except that the context was not normal. You know, there were these beings that kind of looked Egyptian, and they had staffs, and they were sticking the end of the staff into like this clear, well, not clear, but like bright white light, and then using the end of the staff to pull out these like sheaths of this like energy information, and they were kind of tossing it around and creating universes and dimensions with it. Kind of like the way you'd stick a thing in a bottle of bubbles and blow it, you know, very similar to that. But yeah, you know, it takes a while to get comfortable enough to have the kind of clarity, and you know, it's really just your reaction. Ayahuasca actually generally doesn't, unless you react, it doesn't confuse your mind no matter how much you've taken, if you can stay calm. And I think that's another one of the differences between ayahuasca and a lot of the other psychedelics, is that, you know, acid, which I absolutely love, I don't think there's anything wrong with it just because it's semi-synthetic. In fact, I think it's a beautiful testament to the fact that mankind can occasionally work with nature to produce something that is good. Uh, you know, not everything that we make is Pandora's box. But yeah, it does weird stuff to your head, and it's very easy to get confused. If you can maintain your tranquility through breath or from familiarity, then you know, ayahuasca, it's almost like you just pushed a button on an elevator and went somewhere else, more than it is like you're getting high. And then the feeling of an intelligent exchange between yourself and these beings, there's just really nothing like it. I would say that ayahuasca is the weirdest thing that humanity is aware of. It's up there with the pyramids, and you know, it's just impossible, and yet it exists anyways. So let me scroll back and have a look at the chat. Jacob, I think you're saying that I can be more gentle. It really just depends on the dosage and the circumstances. I don't think that that's necessarily true. I've seen ayahuasca put people in some pretty difficult circumstances and situations. It's just a matter of where the person's at, you know, what the medicine is doing. I think that what's really happening with these compounds is that they're turning off the reducing valve in our nervous system and allowing us to have contact with a greater reality. It's not like you're putting a CD in a CD player and then playing the content of that CD. That's how a lot of people think of these compounds. Like it's somehow running a program or something in your mind. And I don't think that's it. I think it's just giving you access to a greater reality, and that each one of these compounds is a different sweep of the spectrum. So, you know, mushrooms are, you know, this part of the spectrum, and then ayahuasca is this part, and then you have something like 5-MeO-DMT that actually just short circuits the entire system. And that's why people report having this unity consciousness and this experience, this direct experience of God, or however you want to think of it. Yeah, so different sweeps of the spectrum for different compounds, and then there's overlap. So, you know, for me, mushrooms are a tool for expanding consciousness, and I think of them as something that I would use to take moderate doses and improve my singing or guitar playing. The biggest advantage of mushrooms, I think, is that they have your brain in such a neuroplastic state with so much neurogenesis going on, that your ability to be creative and to overcome limitations and to dissolve barriers is greatly enhanced. But it's a little bit less efficacious at working with deep traumas than ayahuasca, if that makes sense. Do you prefer DMT or ayahuasca? Definitely ayahuasca, because DMT is just so much so fast. I mean, I think anyone should experience DMT by itself as well, just because it's most of you are not going to be able to handle what would be a breakthrough dose orally. You know what I mean? Like what you would have to smoke to get the whole hyperdimensional speaking to entities experience, unless you have time to work with the medicine for a while. So the benefit of DMT is to be able to get in there and get out in 5 minutes. So by the time you are going to lose your mind, it's over. And it's, you know, you can go a lot deeper, I think, without as much fear and without as much discipline. The negative part of it is that you're not really in a navigable space. You're kind of overwhelmed. It's like you're catapulted out into hyperspace. You have very little time to contemplate things. There's all just this ridiculously weird shit happening, and then you're back. And it's like, okay, that was fucking crazy, but what is the point? And that's often how I feel if I smoke pure DMT. We do use changa, sometimes even towards the end of the ayahuasca ceremonies. You can kind of just bring the visions back to whatever degree you're comfortable with. Using changa, it's extremely convenient in that sense. We'll also use it by itself occasionally because it is, it's kind of a different experience. And also there's something to be said for averting the nausea. Of course, the purge is extremely important. It really helps you to heal traumas in ways that I don't think the Western mind can really wrap its head around. But you know, there's something to be said for not having to vomit every 20 minutes. So, you know, it's nice to be able to get into that like manageable space and have a similar experience to DMT, but you can stretch it out longer and you can take your time getting to the breakthrough dose. So Changa is a really useful and interesting medicine. By the way, I didn't mention, I don't think, that in between visits to indigenous shaman here at the retreat, when I do ceremonies, it's a combination of the traditional Shuar way that I was taught in, and Quechua as well. There's some overlap between those two styles due to the proximity of the tribes, I think. But I also do a lot of things that are very unusual for ayahuasca, and in particular, exposing people to music that is modern and extremely technically dense. Like, you know, Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch by Frank Zappa, probably the most complicated piece of music ever written. And the point of it is that I think you cannot survive that without actually becoming more intelligent. Your brain is capable of upgrading its hardware, and in order to comprehend what it's being confronted with, it kind of has to. So I use the sort of modern concepts like that to address aspects of medicine work that I think are kind of neglected by people kind of sticking too closely to tradition. And it's, you know, important to respect tradition and to understand where everything came from. But one of the things that's getting lost, I think, because there's so much pressure on people to conform to the expectations that people have actually derived from the internet that aren't even correct. Shamanism, one of the most important aspects of it used to be that every shaman had completely different techniques and songs, right? In a lot of tribes, you wouldn't even learn from another shaman. That's not how it worked. The only teacher you had was the plants. And so you wouldn't learn medicine songs. You know, you go to a lot of the more commercial ceremonies and there's like the same 12 songs that everyone sings everywhere. And it's cool because everybody knows the words, so everyone can sing along and have a good time in that way. But it's definitely not the kind of channeled, mind-blowing, interdimensional languages pouring from hyperspace into the shaman that you would expect if you were me, having drank with, you know, Shuar people and, you know, in more traditional, uninfluenced circumstances. And so anyways, yeah, I think it's important that we do take these things into the future and that we embrace new techniques and new styles. And, you know, for me and my entire ethos and MO is that individual sovereignty is much underappreciated in our society and our culture, and that individual freedom of expression is really the goal of the war that we have waged against oppression. And you know, there's a lot of pressure on people to conform to different stereotypes and narratives, both in the mainstream and even in the more obscure fringes of something like ayahuasca, where people have a certain perception that they expect you to fulfill, and if you don't, they're suspicious of you because they've read on the internet that things are supposed to be a certain way. And that has actually corrupted a lot of shamans, where I have literally watched over the years people stop actually practicing in their traditional way because tourists come and they expect them to behave in the way that people have, you know, read online. And it's really unfortunate. So I kind of almost go out of my way to resist that. Let me catch up with the chat again. By the way, you guys, please do hit the like button, share, subscribe. You can support us by joining our Patreon, where you can access secret streams. And of course, you can access all the content I've ever put on Patreon. It's all there. And lately, I think the Masonic secrets that we have been fleshing out from Morals and Dogma, it's been really powerful and amazing stuff. If you're a patron and you haven't watched the last couple of secret streams, do yourself a favor and go back and watch them. But you can also make one-time contributions to support us. In the description, there are ways, and in the chat through Zelle and PayPal, because we're demonetized and we get nothing from YouTube for doing this. Ayahuasca and DMT are the same thing. One is just used with MAO and slowed down. How is working with B copy alone? How is it as an incense? You know, I've never used it as an incense, but I did make an interesting discovery, and this is something that people can try when they come to the retreat. If you cut really, really good vine, while it's still fresh, it oozes the sap that dries yellow, and you can add that sap once it dries, like roll it into a finger, to changa. To make it have more MAOs, more harmalas. And also Bobinsana has harmalas. So I oftentimes will make a paste from the Bobinsana, and then I will make these little fingers mixed with the ayahuasca resin, and then put it sort of like the way you would put a finger of hash in a joint, which I think is a pretty amazing experience. Copy alone, you know, I've never taken like a big full dose of it without the DMT, but I do drink a tea that contains leaves from the vine every single day. And if you drink, like the effect of it is I don't want to say like being drunk, but definitely your vision gets a little bit swimmy. You can get like tracers like LSD, and your intuition and your emotional awareness are all significantly heightened. I would say that, you know, any kind of capacity of consciousness that's more subtle, like precognition even, is going to be enhanced if you consume vine by itself. Bobinsana and mushrooms, you know, they actually recently discovered that there are harmala alkaloids in mushrooms, to varying, you know, there's different ratios and different strains of mushroom. So that's kind of interesting. I actually, the tea that I was mentioning earlier, where I have the Bobinsana and Chiricsananga and the ayahuasca and all of these plants, I actually put an ounce of mushrooms in, well, it's a big batch, so it's maybe a 1/4 ounce per liter or something. So I actually do drink that every single day, a little bit of mushrooms with Bobinsana. And I can't say exactly what that would be like, but you know, you just think about the character of both. Bobinsana is really emotionally opening. I attribute it to my first experience of unconditional love in my life, because my mother was insane and extremely abusive, and I didn't know it, but I didn't know what that was until an experience that I had with ayahuasca and Bobinsana. And so it just kind of put me in an emotional state where I experienced unconditional love. and I definitely attribute it, at least in part, to the Bobensana. So if you take them with mushrooms, Bobensana and mushrooms, then that's going to be, you're probably going to have a more loving, open experience. The difference between cacao and Bobensana is that they have nothing in common. Cacao is another amazing medicine, and we actually have a drink that we make that a lot of people don't even realize that you can do this, but the fruit has this white pith on all of the seeds before it is dried and fermented. And that's where you get the cacao, from the dried and fermented seeds. But there's a white pith. It's actually a fruit that is sort of like pineapple, coconut, and mango or something. It's incredible. It's like the best thing I've ever had. And it is full of all sorts of, gentle stimulants, blood cleansers, antioxidants, a little bit of caffeine, thebaine. It's just absolutely amazing. It's hard to believe that something could be this delicious and also that nutritious, and then also somehow you get chocolate from it. So we actually make a drink for couples. We're thinking about having a retreat that's specifically built around this, actually, where there's Bobensana, Uchu Sananga flowers, which is pinwheel jasmine. It's the sananga that you put in your eyes, but the flowers are different alkaloid constituents in them. And we add that to the cacao. Whoa. Okay, it was just a leaf hopper. Always nerve-wracking when a bug hits you in the head in the Amazon rainforest. Cacao is, completely different than Bobensana, but it is an amazing and powerful medicine, and I would advise anyone to consume as much of it as you humanly can. It was a staple food, one of the main foods of the Inca and the Maya. About all they ate at times. What do you think is the best thing about LSD? Well, interestingly, LSD was studied for its neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, and compared to DPT, DMT, psilocybin, everything else. And LSD turned out to be the most powerful catalyst for neurogenesis and enhanced neuroplasticity the most out of all of the different psychedelics that were tested. And, one of the biggest benefits of it for me is that there is not really any uncomfortable body sensations for the most part. And I like to use psychedelics as enhancer for improvising on the guitar. Whenever I would play shows with my band, I would always take a moderate dose of LSD, sometimes also with MDMA. So I think it's an extremely powerful tool for overcoming limitations and expanding your creativity. It's been proven that anything that you learn under the influence of LSD is sort of burned into your brain, so you can learn much more rapidly and the information sticks much better. There's a lot of very positive applications for LSD, but generally as a tool to expand basically your intelligence and your capabilities, without the distraction of having the body stuff going on. Yes, the Shwar are the head shrinkers. Disassociate drugs in regards to healing and spirituality. It depends on which ones you mean, but ketamine, you just have to go with the research. In this case, for me, I personally do not like the effect of it. I would consider salvia also a dissociative. But, these things just all have slightly different applications with some overlap, right? So, ketamine has turned out to be extremely good for PTSD and depression. It actually can short circuit some types of pain so that you don't have to continue taking it. You just take a huge dose of it under supervision once, and then for 6 months you're good. So people that have Lyme's disease and that sort of thing can avail themselves of ketamine so that they don't have to take opioids, and they don't have to become addicted to ketamine because you don't have to keep taking it. Another really powerful story that I heard, a friend of mine had a friend who had PTSD to the point where she would have panic attacks that were debilitating, and it happened every 15 minutes or something. Like she would just lose it, like several times a day. And she injected a large dose of ketamine, and she said she suddenly found herself in a room that was like just bright white light, but like clear, and there were these blocks, and she just intuitively understood that those blocks represented her fragmented psyche, and that she had to assemble them correctly, and then her PTSD would be gone. And so she assembled the blocks in the proper fashion, and came out of the ketamine, and she never had another attack of PTSD ever again. And there's a lot of stories like that where I guess the separation of the self, the way that the ego and the subconscious maybe is given some space. I don't think anyone really totally understands how this works exactly, but I have not seen a lot of benefit from those kind of compounds, and I don't take them a lot. But we have to go with the research and the anecdotal stuff that people have told us. Besides Palo Santo, we also use copal. The copal tree is from South America, and I always throw a handful of copal resin into the fire during ayahuasca ceremonies. The coffee leaf has tetrahydroharmonium in it, and actually the leaves have higher concentrations of alkaloid than the root does. Mixing 3 grams, how's it going, Raz? Mixing 3 grams of boiled Pegnum Harlan with 10 grams of dried psilocybin. Yeah, I mean, that's basically a formula for ayahuasca. Psilocybin, I don't know if I can remember, it's like 5-hydroxy dimethyltryptamine. It's almost the same compound as DMT. And what I've noticed over the years as I've taken more and more DMT-containing plants and more DMT, mushrooms increasingly just seem like ayahuasca. It's very difficult to tell the difference, except for the lack of vomiting with the mushrooms. So it's an interesting thing. It seems, there are permanent changes to the shape of your brain. You have like a more steep, or I can't remember how exactly it was described, but it's like a ridge in your frontal cortex that develops over years of taking ayahuasca. Uchu the wolf has a lot of fire. Are using lion's mane to aid your work? I would if it was more readily available. I would definitely encourage anyone out there in internet land, to get the most out of life, and definitely to get the most out of your psychedelic experiences. Mucuna, which is the red velvet bean extracts from this that contains L-dopa, which is a dopamine precursor. But it also has N-dimethyltryptamine and a whole host of really helpful and beneficial compounds. It's one of the most important things you can possibly ingest. So taking that along with lion's mane, niacin, and psilocybin is, you could reverse dementia. You're going to enhance your memory, increase intelligence. Your motivation is going to be through the roof. That is definitely one of the best ideas you can possibly have. Supplements, man, mucuna, lion's mane, and niacin, psilocybin, basically a stammet stack, but with mucuna, the red velvet bean. But unfortunately we don't really have access to that kind of thing here in Ecuador. All right, so if you guys have any more questions, I'll give you guys a few minutes to pop them into the chat, but otherwise I am going to sign out because I have not had dinner yet and it's like 8 o'clock. Become a Klingon after drinking ayahuasca for years. We still have a few spots open in the retreat. You can come for anywhere from 1 week to 4 weeks, even possibly longer if you choose. What is the snuff you make from toasted seed mixed with snail shell? That is Wilca, and only because the Yopo is a slightly different species. So there is Adenanthera peregrina and calabrina. And we have calabrina here, which is Wilca. It's very high in 5-HO DMT, but it contains a whole pharmacopoeia of compounds, all sorts of stuff. But 3 different forms of DMT are probably the main active constituents, and it is blown into the nose. And the experience is kind of like hour-long ayahuasca. The original or the initial body load is incredibly uncomfortable. It makes you very, very sick and very uncomfortable for a few minutes. There's a feeling of extreme pressure from vasoconstriction, and if you make it through that part, suddenly it just kind of opens up, and oftentimes there are these like purple beings with tentacles kind of floating around, and I've witnessed a lot of incredible telepathy. Even the next day, around the use of Wilca. Yeah, I use Rape, of course. I like Marisi for a lot of the emasculated men in the world that need to rebuild their connection with their warrior spirit. Marisi is definitely the go-to Rape. Right now I have Yabanaba Rape. It's very good. Of course, there's all different types of Rape for all different uses. It was mostly just used to sharpen the senses to aid in hunting back in the day, but over time it evolved to incorporate all kinds of different plants and have all kinds of different uses. You can put Wilca, speaking of Wilca, Yopo, DMT containing plants in it. There's the Sunu, which is a mystery. It's believed that there is a psychoactive constituent produced when it's burned because the ash seems to be psychoactive. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, so once again, you guys, a few minutes if you have questions. Don't forget to hit the like button, please. Trying to think if I missed anything essential here, but I don't think so. We moved successfully. My health has improved again. I didn't die, obviously. Okay, questions going once, going twice. All right, so here is the email that you guys. Oh wait, I can't type. I just remembered my keyboard's not plugged in. All right, well, you can find the email in the description of the video. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, and thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I hope to see you guys at the retreat on April 2nd. And if not, maybe if I come back to the United States, I'm thinking maybe in August, I might do some ceremonies in Southern California. So thank you again, and we'll see you guys soon.